Hi, I'm Wendy Stapleton and welcome to Wrokdown, coming to you live from Musicland. Tonight our very special guest is one of Australia's most well-known composers. He wrote the movie score for The Man from Snowy River and received an AFI award for that score, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. Would you please welcome Mr. Bruce Rowland.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, Mama.
We're old mates.
We go back a
let's
while.
leave the old out.
Yeah,
We're
okay,
mates.
Okay, deal.
So it's where to start with your career, because in actual fact you have done so much.
No, not really.
A lot of people, well, you have. Because you've actually, one would imagine that if you were composing musical scores for movies and conducting the orchestra at the 2000 Olympics, that you would have probably spent your youth at the conservatorium studying classical music and doing the whole bizzo. However, that wasn't the way, was it?
No.
Tell us about how you started out.
Well, I learned piano as a kid. I think I must have been about 8 or 10 or something like that. I hated it. It was sort of I was terrified of my piano teacher for a start. You know, she had cats and she had this stick and she used to beat it on, all this kind of stuff. So I didn't sort of, I wasn't really into music all that much at all. Came from a musical family. My father was a piano player, played at a concert group during World War II. My mother was a singer. My grandfather on one side was a composer in Maryborough in Victoria. My other grandfather was a singer, amateur baritone. And so I grew up with everyone singing around the piano because there was no television and very little radio.
You forget that. There was no
TV
there was
at
no
all.
telly.
No.
Oh.
And so how it all sort of started, as far as I was concerned, is that I went to a grammar school. I played footy and I played cricket, both reasonably well. Didn't like either of them. I wanted to play basketball. So I took myself off to the YMCA when I was about 14, because that was the only place I could think of where I could play basketball. And they had a YMCA, YWCA camp, and it involved girls. I mean, because girls went to the Y. I didn't know anything about girls. They were completely different animals, because I had 2 brothers, and females were not something I understood. Anyway, the first night they had this campfire sort of stuff, and there was this very cute little blonde girl that was over in the corner, and I felt I just very uncomfortable, so I didn't know what to do, and so I went over and started playing the piano just in the corner because I was really shy. And she sort of came over, and I won the babe, and I thought, this is
way
not,
to go.
Yeah, this is not
go
a bad
to the
deal.
piano. Yeah.
And anyway, the following week, they had a competition. I think it was called the Webster Shield, and there was a young guy there that played saxophone, and he was 14, and there was another guy there who had a snare drum, and so we entered this this competition. We only knew one song that we'd rehearsed, and we won it. And so
what did you play for an encore? The same song?
We didn't have an encore, no. And the prize was that we got to play at the YMCA, YWCA dance the following month, do a guest spot. And we went along and brought the house down. They all loved it. We knew 2 songs by that time. And then we were invited back the next week, and we played a couple more songs, and then we were invited back the 3rd week and said, could we replace the existing band? And I think I was 15 or something by this time. So by 16, I was still at school, but I basically was a professional musician, pretty much self-taught.
And this all just happened like that?
Yeah, it was
your
great.
brothers, I know both your brothers, and they also very much involved in entertainment. One had a recording studio, and Graham, is it Graham, who was a television director?
He was head cameraman at TV
Channel 7?
Yeah, Channel 7.
But
and brother John, the youngest brother, was an audio operator. And it all started when television first started in 1956, and we decided we were going to make our own, as kids, our own amateur TV studio in the garage. And my father and I built these makeshift cameras. And so youngest brother John was the newsreader standing in front of the thing, and other brother Graham was going to be the cameraman and I was going to be the musical director. So I played for all these kids in the street who were going to sing a song. And each of the three of us finished up doing that, the things that we'd set out to.
Which is quite amazing.
Yeah, which was
and very
incredible.
Successfully as well.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was strange.
So from becoming like really an accidental musician, just sort of accidental, you then moved on into playing, obviously people heard this band, you worked your way up through...
we were playing some of those YMCA, YWCA type dances. And then I got to know other people who were playing rock and roll. And these were early days. I think I certainly didn't have a driving licence, so I might have been 16 or 17. Started playing places like Mentone Town Hall with bands called the Sapphires and stuff like that.
And they were big bands.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Big bands.
And filled in with people like the Thunderbirds from different bands and became well known in that sort of circuit. And in those days, you played rock and roll till midnight, and then when I got a driving licence, there was a lot of money playing. A lot of money, like £5 or something, I don't know, playing modern jazz. So you had to sort of get a towel and brush all the Brill cream out of your hair that you'd had for the brush back for the rock and roll, and put on a navy blue sweater and a college cut, and then go and nod a lot and play modern jazz at a coffee lounge somewhere. But I got to the stage of saying to my father, I've just been offered this job to go and join and do something called the Go Show, which was it was 1964, so I was, what was I was 20 or something or other, 21, and I said, look, I want to do it, and my father said, think of your superannuation, you're 21 years of age. I said, no, I just want to play piano. And so I did. The Strangers were the house band, and so I was playing keyboards with them and writing arrangements for whoever the artists were each week. But
can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
When you say writing arrangements, how did this come about? Because you actually hadn't had really like any sort of real formal training.
And so it was a case of...
So how did you learn?
Well, you were given the recording that you had to copy in those days. There were very few original recordings in those early days in Australia. And what happened was, with the advent of these TV shows, the artists who were on each week would be singing somebody else's song. Yeah. So you'd be given a copy of the record and you'd have to go out there and try and work out what you were going to do. Yeah. And you'd sort of make it up as you went along and write a chord chart or whatever else. And I basically just tried and studied and picked everybody's brain that I could think of as far as how to do these things, and bought lots of books and all that kind of stuff.
Did you get any help? Or when I say help, you mentioned before the Strangers.
Yeah.
And of course John Farrar, who went on to write all of the big hits for Olivia Newton-John, and you still are very best friends.
Oh, we're great mates.
You spend
great mates.
half the year in LA with him. But going right back, as you said, they were the house band. And
but
you
what
were
happened
writing
was that all the artists that were doing the show went on to make records, the Lynn Randells of the world and the Johnny Youngs and all those kind of people. And so the only bands that they knew were sort of the incumbent band that was us. But and so we got the gig. But in the meantime, Godfrey Phillip, who was the director of the Go Show in those very early first days, came up to me one day and said, "Can you write songs?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "We're doing a new show called Magic Circle Club. It's a kids' show. It's like a pantomime, and it's going to be 5 days a week. It's going to be live. And do you want to be musical director?" I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." I mean, this was how it was in those days.
This is where the story takes off. We're going to take a short break and be back soon with Bruce Rowland.
Thank you. It's true, though. It's silly stuff. Yeah.
Rowkdown.
Welcome back to Wrokdown. Our special guest this evening is composer Bruce Rowland, and we've just been chatting about the early Go Show days, and then Godfrey Phillip, who was one of the, I guess, the first...
He was a pioneer as far as special effects and stuff like that. It's a good word. As far as special effects and stuff like that. Bearing in mind, in those years, there was no videotape. nothing like that. We had kinnies and things like that, but videotape.
What's a kinnie?
Kinnie was sort of like a film that had been transferred, and they would, I don't know technically what it actually looked like, but it was the precursor, if you like, to what videotape has become. Yeah.
So you were asked by Godfrey to have a go at this
Writing.
kids show.
Yeah. So I had to write 10 songs a week. Turned out to be 10 songs a week, 50 weeks a year, every week. And writing parts for them. It was like a 3 or 4 piece band and stuff like that. And it was just fun.
So you basically learnt on your feet, didn't you?
Yeah. And then that show folded up. And
But how long did you do that for?
Well, it became, Magic Circle Club became Adventure Island pretty much on the ABC. So I think it was about 6 years, 7 years, something like that. From about 1964 or 5 through to about 1970. So 5 or 6 years.
So you were writing 500 songs a year?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Silly
Not bad.
stuff, yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. And basically doing orchestrations, and then as it got better, or as I got better at it, we were getting guest players in and stuff like that. Then I finished up doing, when that show finished, I thought, well, what am I going to do for a living? And I thought, well, the only thing I know how to do is write songs and play piano. So I thought, well, advertising jingles. So I got fired, actually, off the Adventure Island, which was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Godfrey was, he had some problems, and he was a little unstable at times, and one day he came in and just said, "You're fired." Anyway, I kept thinking, well, what am I going to do? So I thought, I'll walk up and down St Kilda Road and I'll knock on every advertising agency's door.
A lot of girls did that.
I'm not even going close to that. I've known you for too long. So I decided I wanted to be a jingle writer. So that's sort of what happened. And so I finished up doing about 10 jingles a week, every week, for probably another 10 years, 12 years, something like that.
And that was where we met?
Yeah.
I met you 70s?
Yep.
And I can attest to this. There were yourself. I'll leave some people out invariably and be in a lot of trouble, but basically at AAV, which was the place in Melbourne, Bill Armstrong's actually, it was Armstrong's. Yourself, I guess Peter Best.
Peter Best in those days.
Mike Brady.
Yeah. Mike came in a bit later.
He came in later.
Yeah.
And there were the fabulous, Bruce
Woodley.
Bruce Woodley
He
and
came
Bruce
in a little bit
Smeaton
later as well. Bruce Smeaton, Peter Best and myself were sort of the early ones, and then Mike Brady came in, Andrew Wilshire came in later on. And bear in mind there were no synthesizers in those days, so everything was real. And so for the average jingle, and I would do 10 a week, used to book out 2 days of the studio at AAV or Armstrong's, and probably another 2 days at Alan Eaton's, and do at least 3 a day, if we could. And each of those would involve a vocalist, probably a 3 or 4 part vocal group, probably 12 strings, 3 trumpets, 3, 4 trombones, 4 or 5 woodwinds, drums, guitar, electric bass, percussion, probably harp. And this is where I learnt my craft.
We're going to go to a break, but before we go to the break, our good buddy Russell Morris has released, and we all go back, and you would have known Russell from his Real Thing days. Yeah. Has a new album out. It's called Van Diemen's Land. So we're going to show you a clip from Russell's new album.
I look
Russell
forward to
Morris.
hearing it.
Yeah.
still in the air. We sailed from Plymouth Harbor, northwestly blowing bare. The rain was tumbling all around in buckets from the sky, and the wind that stole our breath away, sharp as a razored knife. On a voyage to the end of the world on George's prison ship, 200 lost and hungry souls would feel a lashing whip. A gale, it howled all through the rigging on that first black night. It's like the devil himself up there singing this lullaby. I'm going down, 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 Van Diemen's Land. I'm going down, hellbound, Van Diemen's Land. 30 days out at sea and the wind it blew too calm. So I marched us round the quarter deck to the beat of a mournful drum. Oh, 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 is me, have mercy on my soul. Whoever thought I'd end up here some godforsaken hole. I'm going down, 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 Van Diemen's Land. I'm going down, hellbound, Van Diemen's Land. Late at night, the ship at sea is rocking like a cradle. Drifting with my haunted dreams, the dice is on the table. Then the wind, it starts, it's blowing, conjuring up the waves. And I tell myself, when it comes, that fortune favors the brave. We sailed around the Southwest Cape and up the Derwent's Mouth, and on towards Hobart Town the rumors were about. We heard the Chinese whispers of Port Arthur and its wreck. If I get myself out of here, ain't never coming back. I'm going down, 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 Van Diemen's Land. I'm going down, hellbound, Van Diemen's Land.
Welcome back to Wrokdown. Our special guest tonight is the composer extraordinaire, Mr. Bruce Rowland. Bruce Mick Peeling, of course,
Yes, I do,
from
yeah.
the Stars, is part of our Wrokdown team.
Yeah.
And we have a new little segment, or it's quasi-new, called Mick's Picks. So we're going to cross over to Mick Peeling and find out his picks for this episode. So here we go, Mick's Picks.
Hi Rockdowners, Mick Peeling here, and this is Mick's Picks for this week. I've been listening of late to a band called Mustard Courage, a Melbourne band. I've only just discovered them recently via the wonderful internet, and they consist of 3 guys from Melbourne and an expat from Austin, Texas, and it's just wonderful bluegrass music. If you want to check them out live, I definitely recommend that, but they've got a lot of stuff on YouTube, etc. So you can check them out there. But this particular album is a wonderful thing to behold. Great original music and wonderful players. That's Mustard Courage and Power Lines. Also, I've been listening to a band that is based in Brisbane, and they're called Halfway. And if you don't mind, I might just read you a bit of a blurb on these guys. They're an 8-piece band based in Brisbane, Australia. 3 of the members, John Busby, Elwyn Horton and Chris Dale, originally hail from Rockhampton. After moving to Brisbane and recruiting the like-minded Ben Johnson on bass, Halfway was formed in 2000. And then they were joined by a couple of brothers who were born in Dublin, Noel Fitzpatrick on pedal steel and Liam Fitzpatrick on banjo and mandolin. So you can sort of guess what kind of sound you're going to be expecting on this fantastic album by Halfway called Any Old Love. Also, the finishing touches to the lineup were added with the inclusion of ex-go-between John Wheelsteed on guitar and Luke Peacock on keys and guitar. I definitely recommend this one from Halfway, Any Old Love.
Here I am back with my special guest Bruce Rowland, and Bruce, I think we were up to the part of your life, I guess the 70s, 80s, where you were doing jingles.
Yes, yes.
And so to say that you did a lot of work was an understatement, because basically people virtually lived at AAV and Alan Eaton's. It was
totally,
like a
yeah.
full-on
Totally,
job.
yeah.
Wonderful time. And then you were approached to write for movies.
Yeah, well, it was strange the way it happened, but a friend of mine, or a colleague, a guy called Simon Windsor, moved in next door to our place. And I'd heard there was a movie called Man from Snowy River, which was being shot. And I thought, gee, I'd like to have a go at that. But I'd never done a movie before. I'd done lots of jingles. I'd done a few documentaries and things in those early days. Anyway, cutting to the chase, I mentioned to Simon I'd like to have a go at it. I remember sitting there reading this script about a girl, and she was playing the piano, and she was thinking about her guy that she was very keen on, and it was all based around the mountain cattlemen and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, cutting to the chase, I've gotten to bed about 10 o'clock, it was cold. I woke up bolt upright about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, I've got an idea. I've never done this before. Walked downstairs, had a cassette player, just went clunk like that, and went bang, and out came Jessica's theme in one hit. Absolutely one hit, just like that. One hit. Straight down. Only difference was it had an extra verse in it than how we finished up recording it. Anyway, the next day I put it onto a cassette, and they also wanted something orchestral. Well, the only thing I'd done that was big and orchestral I'd done for the Wool Corporation, and it was big and bold and French horns and stuff, so I put that on it and gave it to Simon. He gave it to George Miller, who was the director, and George was having lunch with Siggy Thornton and Tom Burlinson. So Simon just sort of tossed the cassette in and said, this is something that a friend of mine's...
My next door neighbour's
come up with. And so George put it into the cassette player and played it, and then rewound it and played it again, rewound it and played it again. By this time Sigrid was bawling her eyes out in the back seat, and George said, I've got to have it. But he looked at the front, he said, but it's no good. He said, the bugger's written it for the Wool Corporation, because they'd written Wool Corporation on it. So they got to the restaurant, and George is on the phone trying to call someone and sort of say, look, try and buy the rights to it or something. And he finally got onto Simon and said, no, Bruce wrote it for the movie last night. And George said, book him. And of course, the producer had wanted somebody else to do it. And so then there was all this sort of power struggle.
Argy-bargy.
Anyway, cut to the chase. It was the first movie I'd ever done. I'd never done a movie before. I had no idea how long it would take me to write a film score. I'd never written a film score.
And there are so many things. I've been to your studio at your home.
Yeah.
There are so many things that as songwriters and recording,
Yeah.
when you're doing a movie, there's this whole other thing
Oh,
that
yeah,
you have
totally,
to do. Can you
totally,
take us a little bit through what you call all of the...
It's, first of all, you've got to write music that works with the film, and you've got to write something that works emotionally with the film. And it is not necessarily a rhythmic thing, particularly if you're dealing with horses and stuff like that. You don't want rhythm sections getting in the way, because otherwise it gets very cluttered up. But it's something that you've got, you have to write around 40 minutes of music. This
For
is
how much movie?
for probably an hour and a half movie. So there's about 40 to 50 minutes of actual music in that. Now, the only way you can look at it is to say to yourself, divide it up by days. And I'd never had to do this before, but what it comes down to is a case of saying, you can't do this 7 days a week. I did. But you physically cannot do it. You've got to have at least 1 day off a week. And I wrote Man from Snowy River and orchestrated the whole lot in 13 days. The lot. And that was working... Don't applaud it, it was crazy. But the only reason is I didn't know how long it would take. And so it was 13, or actually about 12 and a half days. And I averaged 20-hour days, and I'd get 4 hours sleep. But I'd get 2 hours sleep, and then I'd wake up and I'd go back to it, because I just locked myself away completely. And then...
You have to orchestrate it.
Oh, no, I orchestrated as well in that time. But then the scary part was that my deadline was not due for another 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So I had to sort of fudge it and sort of pretend that I was still writing it, even though I'd actually finished it. And, because I thought, if they think that I've finished it that quickly, they'll think that I've been really slacking on the job and I've done a crappy job. So it was, that's sort of...
So you had to build it up a bit.
Well, no. And that's sort of how it went by. But what happens is 2 minutes a day is a lot of music to write and to orchestrate. If you're working...
Bunches of grapes.
Oh, yeah, bunches of grapes.
Fly sheet on paper.
It's different now because you're using computers and stuff. When I first worked in America and did movies in the States, it was very much a sort of a studio empire kind of stuff. So the composer would come in my case, I was Australian, and they'd never worked with an Australian before, so I was put up into a motel somewhere or other. And so you have a spotting session with the director, and you talk about where the music's going to be and what kind of music and that sort of stuff. And so then basically you go off and you sit yourself down at a piano with a tape recorder or what, and a click track, because it's got to match.
That's what I was getting back to before.
I've got to be accurate to within 1/24th of a second, because there are 24 frames per second, 24 frames of film that go through the sprockets every second. So I have to be accurate literally within a frame, because if you're not, and the boy kisses the girl and all of a sudden the music's in the wrong spot and it goes da-da, you sort of think, now it shouldn't really go da-da, we should have some violins or something like that doing all this. So it's got to be accurate, and that's really the difference between film music, because you're dealing with several areas here. You're dealing with emotionally what's going on the screen, you're dealing with the action that's going on, you're dealing with a completely different language. Think about Jaws. Think about the opening scenes of Jaws. What you've got is you've got a couple kissing and canoodling in a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean. Everything's lovely. It's a beautiful sunny day, wonderful sunny day, like that. And everyone, it's very, very romantic. And all of a sudden you hear this dum 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 dum, and you think, holy, what is going on here? The music has just told you that something completely different than what you're looking at on the screen. The screen says it's a lovely summer's day, it's romantic, they're going to get it on in the lifeboat. The music's saying something is very, very dangerous here. This is a different language, it's a completely different scene. And music has the ability to change what people's perceptions are from what you're looking at.
Totally.
Completely. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a short break. Be back soon with Bruce Rowland and hear more about the movie,
Okay.
writing for the movie. Thank you. Welcome back to Wrokdown. And of course, I'm here with my gorgeous Miss Soozie Pinder, who has been out and about. You're looking very Xena, warrior woman tonight.
Should I do this? Tick, 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 tick.
Well, if you like.
Who can I aim it at in the audience?
You've been out and about and, of course, been catching up with the gorgeous Jeff Duff.
I love Jeff Duff. He's the only other human being on the earth that wears more bling than me.
Well, you could be right. You could be right. But he's an amazing, amazing artist.
I could not believe that I had the good fortune to interview him, and he joined us for dinner, and we had some wicked conversation over dinner. He is one of the naughtiest human beings you'll ever meet, but talent, oh my gosh.
We interviewed Jeff I think probably 5 or 6 years ago. We did a short interview with Jeff, and thinking that it would be very casual because he invited us to just go and interview him at a friend's flat in South Melbourne. And our Nita, our director, and she who must be obeyed.
We're not worthy.
We arrived, and of course Jeff was wearing like the yellow suit, the yellow pants, the yellow hat, the yellow scarf, the yellow glasses. He's always just perfectly
groomed and gorgeous.
And gorgeous.
Everything matches.
Absolutely gorgeous. But he's an amazing artist. So let's tell us about what you did.
Maybe we should have a little look.
Let's have
at
a look.
It, hey?
Okay.
All right. Here's Jeff Duff.
Between the parted pages, and we're pressed in love's unfevered iron, like a striped pair of pants. The park is melting in the dark, all the sweet green ice flowing down. Someone left the cake out in the rain, and I don't think that I can take it, 'cause it took so long to bake it, and I'll never have that recipe again.
Hello, you.
Hey, babe.
So good to see you, huh?
It's great to see me too, isn't it?
Yeah, you're fantastic. Now you're here with Grandma Zoo.
I'm not actually with them. I'm sort of part of them tonight. Yeah.
Part of them.
Yeah.
There's a bit of history with the band. Is that?
Yeah, a few of the guys from Kush are in Grand Wazoo, and like the Kush boys go back, early mid 70s. So it's great to team up with them again.
Now we're coming up for your 27th album, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
How can that be?
I know, it's ridiculous, and I still don't get any airplay.
He does at Southern FM on my show, Wrokdown Radio. You do, yes.
Cool. Oh, that's good.
Yes.
But I don't mind. I don't mind being a secret regarding my recorded work. But yeah, my 27th album, and who'd have thunk that?
Tell us about the new album.
Well, I've written the songs with a guy from Icehouse, Steve, the bass player from Icehouse, and I guess it's taken about two years really from the first song we wrote about 2 years ago, and it's been a labour of love and a work in progress over that time, because he's busy with Icehouse and I'm busy doing all my shows, so whenever we could get together we would, and we've got other musicians, and the drummer from Icehouse plays on it as well, and lots of other great musicians. Yeah, I was in.
Haven't you been in the Gatsby recently?
Yeah, I was in Gatsby recently with Leonardo, my co-star Leonardo.
And how'd that come about?
Well, I've got a theatrical agent who sort of gives me bit parts every now and again, or cameos, and he said he just called me one day and he said, "Would you like to be in Gatsby?" And I said, "Well, yeah, as long as it doesn't take too much time, because I've got lots of gigs." But we managed to fit it in over about 6 weeks. I managed to slot it in, and I had to play. Ironically, I had to play a lunatic.
Oh, no.
One of Leonardo DiCaprio's house guests in the mansion. So I was literally playing a drunk, and I don't drink. So and I wore great clothes though. Actually, when I went in for the casting, the casting director said, "Look, we won't even have to dress you. You've got
your own wardrobe."
Yeah. So I wore knickerbockers and curled up, Arabian shoes and little feathers, and I wasn't really allowed to wear makeup, but I'd sneak into the makeup tent and put makeup on.
Why should you not wear makeup?
Well, because it was, I don't know. Actually, it was the 20s, and I'm sure a lot of guys did wear makeup.
Of course they did. Speaking of makeup, what blue eyeshadow have you got on? It's glorious.
It's Mother's Own.
Mother's Own. Mother's Own. It's glorious. It's beautiful.
Well, it's okay. It sort of highlights my pupils, doesn't it?
It does, indeed.
I lived next door to David Bowie for 10 years in Elizabeth Bay.
That's what blew my mind.
Yeah.
10 years. And everyone says, I didn't know Bowie even lived in Australia.
Well, he wasn't really recognisable. He had a little beard, and he was playing in his punk band called Tin Machine. 91, 92, he recorded 2 albums at EMI in Sydney.
Had no idea about that.
Yeah, I bumped into it. Well, his musicians bumped into me in Elizabeth Bay Road one day, and they said, "Oh, we've been coming up to see you perform up the road in your band." And they said, "Would you like to come and say hello to David?" I said, "David?" They said, "Yes, David Bowie. He's just in the coffee shop there."
Get out.
So so we went and had coffee, and we got chatting, and they'd come up and see my then band. A few times a week. We had a little residency up in King's Cross.
I bet he went home and said, I live next door to Jeff.
Oh, of course.
Of course he did.
Goes without saying.
And I bet he had wardrobe envy.
Well, he looked a little like a farmer at the time. He just had one of those checked shirts and corduroy trousers. But he's still a very handsome dude.
He very much so. So where do you get your inspiration for your shows? Because there's another funny little show that is it Frank Sinatra?
Oh, Ground Control to Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Well, because I've got this huge big band, a 20-piece big band in Sydney, and we do, strict Sinatra things. We do a club called The Basement. It's called Sinatra Rocks the Basement. And, they're legit Sinatra charts that we do. But at the same time, I'm doing this Bowie thing, and I thought, well, there must be a way of combining these two shows. So I wrote this hypothetical story about this neurotic theatrical agent living in New York. He booked David Bowie for Madison Square Garden one night, and he booked Frank Sinatra for the Sands Casino in Las Vegas on the same night. But he gave them the wrong air tickets, and they ended up at one another's gigs by mistake, and I had to go on playing one another's material. And that's the premise for the show.
How did you come up with that?
I don't know. It just seemed like a natural thing to do.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
And it's great. So we swing David Bowie material, and we rock out to Frank Sinatra's material.
Well, I think you are worth it. I'm so pleased to have you on Wrokdown TV, and I just can't wait to hear you sing tonight. It's going to be magic. Thank you, Jeff Duff.
Pleasure.
You
Thank
gorgeous
Soozie.
man.
Thank you.
Over and out for Wrokdown TV. How could you not love him?
He's always been so innovative. Like, started off, or as far as I know, like Kush was when I first became aware of Jeff Duff. Over at the in Kew at the what was the pub over there? The Prospect Hill.
Oh yeah.
They played there all the time, and then when I was in Wendy and the Rockets and I lived in London, we bumped into Jeff, and he'd been there for years, and he'd developed this little character that they used to just call Duffo.
Yeah.
And he was so sort of off the wall. Half the people in London, everyone knew him. Everyone knew Jeff Duff.
How would you not know him?
But half the people thought he was just totally eccentric.
Yeah.
And then the other half actually realised that he was really quite an incredibly talented artist, and he would create these little magical shows. Yeah. And he actually, I guess, eked out, didn't make a lot of money, but he certainly had a great reputation. Well, he
was in The Great Gatsby recently with Leonardo DiCaprio. They of course they wanted him in there with the character costumes. He spoke about the love of his life, a gorgeous woman, Tawny, and that she was his muse. And he went quite deep about that and quite almost heartbroken about it, and it was just beautiful to speak with him about that, about his wardrobe, about these Chanel shoes that he had his eye on. They were $1,600 shoes, and should I buy them? I said, of course you should. They should be giving them to him. So he's a wonderful human being, and it was a real delight to speak with him.
Go and see anything where you see Jeff Duff's name's written, and it'll be a great show. And would you thank our gorgeous Miss Soozie Pinder?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Don.
Be back soon.
Rowkdown.
Welcome back to Wrokdown. My special guest tonight is composer Bruce Rowland. And we were just chatting before. You have so far composed 46
Movies, yeah.
Movies.
I think so, yeah. I think so. I forget, but I think it's about 46, yeah. Okay.
46 movies ain't bad. So,
All kinds of stuff. Animals,
yep, animals.
kids movies, a lot of animation, different stuff, you know.
And also, apart from the fact that, you know, doing a lot of stuff in Australia, you've also done a lot of work over in the States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I did a few movies there. I did a thing called Andre, which was a lovely family movie about a little girl and a seal, true story. Another thing called Zeus and Roxanne, which was a kids movie once again about a dog and a dolphin. I worked on Aladdin, The Return to Jafar, and then got hauled off that halfway through because they wanted me to take over the Aladdin cartoon episodic thing which they did for television. So I did a bit of that as well. Lots of stuff.
lots of stuff. Apart from all of that, you also conducted the orchestra at the 2000 Olympic Games
Yeah,
in
literally,
Sydney. So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about that.
I'd never been more terrified in my entire life. I literally opened the games with the Sydney Symphony, and it was one of those things where we'd had several rehearsals and stuff, but we had lots of bugs and things that went wrong on the day or on the night. And I didn't have the director in my headset. All I had in the headset was the lighting director.
Oh, good.
And so I had no one until about 1 second beforehand to give me the cue as far as when the downbeat was to physically open the game.
Physically conducting an orchestra, which of course opening the Olympic Games is live.
Yes.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
no two ways about that. It's totally live. You're conducting an orchestra. How big was the orchestra?
About 120 piece.
120 piece. You're conducting them.
Yeah.
You've got no director in the headset.
No.
How also were the orchestra operating that night?
Well, look, the orchestra were fantastic. But I have to correct you in one thing. It also, the opening was pre-recorded, but the difference was they had to carry that pre-recording along with the live. They took the live feed, but in case anything went wrong and there was a technical failure, there would be a pre-recording as a backup. And so that's why it had to be synchronised. So
Yes.
there would have to, I had to be able to try and hear my original count in when we recorded it, so that if there was a problem,
You could switch.
I could switch. Yeah, and
But,
that's what they
but
did.
you actually were conducting 120 musicians.
Yep.
And in that vast space.
I've never been so terrified in my life. I kept thinking, if I screw this up, there's only 5 billion people watching this. This is a monumental failure, not just a little bit of a failure, you know. But look, luckily everything worked out fine.
46 movies. Probably, I'm saying, at least about 3,000 jingles.
Probably 2.5 at least.
No, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And all of those years since you started as a 14-year-old working at the YMCA, or what was it called? The Scout Club or something?
No, it was YMCA. But what else would I have done? You know, really.
Could have got a real job.
That's yeah. I've known you too long.
Ladies and gentlemen, my very, very special guest tonight, the amazing Mr. Bruce Rowland.
Thank you.
But don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
We're going to take you out tonight with the Iain Archibald Band. So we'll be back soon. Don't you go anywhere either. We're coming back with the Iain Archibald Band. Thank you very much. Good night. Good night.
We've been dreaming of a new life since we first met. When you were working 12-hour shifts trying to pay your rent, and I just moved here from a small country town. Fate that brought us to that same place, and you with your friends laughing about something I couldn't hear. Then our eyes met and they're brand new. You were the girl from my dreams. 1 year later we became husband and wife. Whoa. This morning just watching my breath on me, yeah. But it spread over my chest like an ocean still now. Not much to this room, but it sounds and I'm proud of that. I don't wanna get up and stay with it. You can waste away the day. Comes his back to sleep all day and live all night. We're gonna share this new town up tonight. It's a new life for you and me. Sing whoa, whoa. Some people live their lives for tomorrow, but that's their choice. Standing together when life hits you hardest. Gonna sleep all day and live all night. We're gonna share this new town up tonight. It's a new life for you and me. It's a new life, just me and you. We're just running out of love, there's so much there.